Get to our topic of interest today. I'm glad to have some folks in the room that are passionate about service projects. The biggest concern in terms of community service and conservation service projects is always safety. Safety always comes first. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, let's mention that the Boy Scouts of America has had a long-standing tradition of encouraging each individual unit to provide some level of service to the community that they're part of. We are a community organization. We're chartered by some entity that is local. And whether we're doing service for a chartered organization or another local group, that's part of what scouting is all about. We're local. The biggest thing, and I just got a great definition for this, was when you ask the question, what constitutes a service project? It's really broad. When any service is performed by your unit or members of your unit that helps somebody else. You're not benefiting, somebody else is benefiting, which casts a really broad net. You can think of a lot of things that would fall in this category. And like I just mentioned, I kind of break this up into two different categories. I think of it as community service, again, with doing something for another group, another set of people. And then conservation service I like to talk about too, because you're doing service for the earth, your local natural habitats, and so we're all benefiting from that as well. So let's start by talking about our community service projects. Daryl and I sat down and kind of did a little brainstorming and looked at a few lists, and we came up with some ideas, and there are some more out there, I'm sure. But we always start with giving back to our chartered organization. They own us, they sponsor us, and if you can find a way to give back, whatever that is, whether it's landscape management or picking up trash or whatnot, that's always a great place to start. Adopt a school is a big thing. Does anybody else do adopt a school? Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit. There's actually a program out there for BSA. They have an adopt a school thing. And again, if you're like my pack and you're sponsored by a PTO, that's pretty simple. You adopt the school your scouts go to primarily, and there you go. There's some classic drives: clothing drive, book drive, food drive. Scouting for Food's obviously a big player in that here locally. Toy drive. And these are all going to sort of behave similarly. The difference being who's benefiting. Where are you sending the clothing? Where are you sending the books? Where are you sending the toys? There's an assist the elderly. There's a very broad range there of you could go visit nursing homes, send letters, go and sing carols to the elderly at an elderly care home. Veterans Memorial Day, we've got a few pictures on that one. That's a kind of a classic. Flags on the headstones. And then litter and cleanup and beautification of an area, whether it be a parking lot or a trail or something like that. So my first photo is actually my pack. It's about half of our Cub Scouts. Our chartered organization is right behind the sign. And they have a parking lot that's across the street. They're trying to sell the parking lot, is the story here. And back in May, we said, hey, the parking lot's looking kind of gross, papers and stuff everywhere. Can we kind of help out and clean it up? And it took us about 45 minutes. And you see kids are having fun. Got a fair bit of trash. And it happened to be the same day as the Cub Scout shootout. So we did this in the morning, went over to Cub Scout shootout in the afternoon, and it was fantastic. So this is a good example of litter cleanup, I think. I'm sure you guys have some other good examples too. I mentioned the Veterans Day, Memorial Day. This is always good. It always makes for a good photo op. The Cub Scout putting a flag in the cemetery kind of thing. I haven't done that yet. And we're going to do this, I think, later this year for the first time, so it's going to be interesting. Have you guys ever done this kind of thing yet with your pack?
Yeah. I've done it with Boy Scouts.
Boy Scouts, okay. Scouts. Yeah, we're going to try to find a connections, can we help kind of thing. I assume you'll have to do that in advance and sign something up. I think everybody here should be familiar with Scouting for Food drives, right? Everybody does Scouting for Food.
You know when it is?
Scouting for Food is always the first Saturday in December. And it's always cold.
Yes.
2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, it was bitterly cold. My oldest son's first one. Just because we do Scouting for Food in December Doesn't mean that if you as a pack decide you want to also do a food drive, you can't do something in May or June. Do it in your local neighborhood. Put out flyers and say, hey, we're going to do a food drive for the food pantry. Help us out. It's an easy way to do a service project. There's always need for food at the food pantries. Did you have a comment on food?
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Please share if you do.
Oh, no, it's no big deal.
Okay. This is something that's a little bit older. We used to, in our council, have a good turn. You guys might be familiar with this. And Goodwill actually kind of stopped the program. They said they weren't benefiting very much. But these, as Boy Scouts here, actually, you can do this with Cub Scouts, do a clothing drive. And one of the ideas that I came across, I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago, was kind of a similar thing. An idea for a pack meeting I want to let you guys know about. And the idea is sock wars. Is anybody familiar with this? Sock wars?
Wars, okay. I used to play that with my brothers and sisters when
So the deal is you've got a gaggle of Cub Scouts, 20, 30, 40 hopefully, maybe 10, who knows. And every family that comes brings a big bag of tube socks, brand new, clean, in the wrapper, okay? And maybe the Cub Master takes the Cub Scouts off and does a gathering activity, while the adults roll up the pairs of socks into rolls. And then when that's all done, the Cub Scouts come back, and the fun thing is to have, in essence, an indoor snowball fight with socks. You could go to the extent of creating a 4 corners, if you have a cornered building like this, a big gym, where you create, I've heard of creating forts out of cardboard boxes. And you could do something like capture the flag. You're out if you get tagged by a sock. At the end of the meeting, the socks are still fairly clean, we hope. They're new. Get them all back together and donate them to a homeless shelter or a homeless clothing bank, something like that. Apparently socks are really hard to get and keep in a clothing shelter, homeless shelter, that kind of thing. Again, you'd have to kind of figure out where are we going to send these things, but that was a cool idea. I've heard it's a lot of fun. The Scouts love throwing socks around. Just an idea for what it's worth.
Outside down, always take them.
Sorry?
Outside downtown, they use shelter that always take them.
Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome.
I think my understanding is that things like jackets and blankets and stuff like that, everyone thinks, oh, I'll take a bunch of jackets down. It's great. They need socks too. So it's just something that was mentioned to me. I thought it was a neat idea. Other than that, you could do more of a traditional clothing drive, again, to local places that have need. Book drive. And again, you're going to target, are we doing this for a school or are we doing this for a youth group? But it's going to be kind of the same way as we do scouting for food. Let your neighbors know that we're going to be collecting books. If you have any books that you're not using, send your Cub Scouts out. Cute Cub Scouts in uniform, man. They'll give them anything, it seems like. These guys got a lot of great books. So that's my list. I don't know. Yes?
I thought they were supposed to wear uniforms except for the few fundraisers that go door to door.
Okay, that's specific for fundraisers. For service projects, we're not financially benefiting. And yes, technically the reason BSA National Council has said you can wear your uniforms for council-sponsored the fundraisers, thank you. And for us, that's popcorn and beef sticks and candy in the spring. The reason they ask us not to, I think it's ridiculous personally, the reason they ask us not to is because we're representing the Boy Scouts of America, and if we're doing our own thing, the BSA doesn't have any quality control over what we're selling. We could be selling fake Rolexes, we could be selling who knows what. So from their perspective, they're saying, we don't necessarily approve of what you're doing, or we don't not approve, but we don't know what you're doing as an individual unit, so please don't wear your uniform. I find that kind of obnoxious, personally, because my group sells some really great product, and we just kind of let the boys go out and whatever they want to wear. And if they want to wear their uniform, that's fine. That's our take on it. But yeah, in terms of doing any kind of service project, there's no uniform do or don't rule. We're doing some kind of a service. We're trying to help some other group. Uniforms are just fine. Did you want to come up and talk about the clean water thing real quick?
Well,
Come on, tell us about your idea. That was cool.
So, yeah, so it really is a great project. So the only requirement they have, I mean, you just go out and you find an area in your neighborhood, which we're real close to you guys, because we're just at the Mormon church just around the corner on West Union.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of my boys go to Rock Creek. So you just go find a neighborhood that doesn't have the little patches on the corners. And so we just did an area over at Stoller Farms. And so then they give you all these, and they give you some pretty hefty glue. So you have to have an adult do this part so it's on straight. But you just glue on here. One provided gloves for people who are gluing because
Okay,
it was,
sticky stuff.
but it does come off.
Okay.
A couple of our men that had too big a hands for the gloves I had, and it did come off. But
It was
so
okay.
they give you these little ones.
So are you
to
doing that on the curb right by
We do it
it?
actually on top of the curb where the drains are.
Oh, okay, okay. So everyone knows where it is.
No ducking, you know. Yeah, and they send you out a form
Okay.
on where to go too. So they send you out a instruction
Okay.
sheet.
Because they service certain areas and like,
You can choose any area you want. You
Yeah.
tell her, so you just go count. So we just drove around and counted how many houses, and on Google you can get a pretty good map of how many. And
yeah,
then the boys go and take this
and do
and
fly.
do the flyers at the
Okay.
houses for the neighborhood that you're putting the drains on.
So you put it in front of each house?
No.
It's
only
in
at
front of the drain.
Only at the
So
drain?
that the neighbors know
So-
where the drain
So there were
is.
187
Yeah.
houses, but 40 drains.
Yeah, okay.
Got it.
So it doesn't take very long. So we had
Oh, these go to the house.
these.
Yeah.
were
Got it,
houses.
got it.
So they just hang them on the doorknob.
Yeah,
And
okay.
so the little brothers and sisters can help too. We
Yeah,
had
absolutely.
47 people come and participate, and we
Yeah,
got all done in an hour, 187.
that's really neat. Okay.
That's an awesome
And 40
project.
drains.
Yeah, that's very
And we
cool.
were able to do it on a Wednesday night from, you know, from 6 to 7,
Yep.
and we done, and we had popsicles at the end, and
Perfect.
everybody was real happy because we didn't have to use up a Saturday.
Yeah, definitely.
And they provide all the stuff for you, you just have to go out there, and then afterwards, they have you send a map, which I did maps, and I
Okay.
sort of marked each section.
To let
I
them
had-
know where you.
I had 9 sections, so I put a
Yeah.
family or group, you know, in each of the sections to do
Sure.
it. And then I had 2 men with their sons do I think since we only have 2 wire brushes, people don't.
Okay.
paint
Oh,
their
because you have to really clean off.
You have to
the-
clean it off with a
yeah.
wire brush, so that was we only had 2.
But if you're clever, you get a gas-powered
No.
pressure washer.
No, because it can't be wet.
Oh,
How many
yeah.
hours?
So it can't be a rainy day. So
No,
it's
it
a
can't be
little
a rainy
bit.
day.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
that's not a problem now.
Right.
It'll dry in 3 seconds
It
today.
has to be 6 hours from
Pretty
the,
much.
usually do it 6 hours
Yeah.
after rainstorm or before the next one.
Okay.
So you have a pretty good chance, right?
We have, like what he was saying is, it dries pretty quick
Right.
right now.
And,
Yes.
and the wire brush just takes off, you know, all that good stuff. If
Great.
you do power wash it, you see that there's
Yeah.
stuff there. So, you know, hopefully it'll stay on for, 5-10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of neighborhoods in our area have been done, but then the things are coming off, so it's just good to do. We have enough people move in again that sort of
Yeah,
forget.
and it seems like those things with a good set of glue would probably last longer than paint.
And
'Cause that's gonna-
we're doing it all in our unit, like
Mhm.
we had our community problem with clean water. You know,
Okay.
So we presented it to our council
Yeah.
for the Wolf book now for the new parts. So we
Oh,
presented-
excellent. Yes.
So we presented the problem of getting clean water, asked
Yeah.
about doing the service project, and we're doing the service project, and then week after day camp, we're going down to the clean water, not the clean water, but the Tualatin Water District thing at
Yeah.
Burlow and 170th there.
That's, yeah, one.
And
yeah,
they're
one
gonna
second.
show, and I would have done a little bit different, but our PAC didn't have their service project, so they used my service project. But usually I would have done that one before, because they're
Okay.
gonna do a thing that shows how the water gets from our wells to our houses.
Okay, yeah.
But
There was a great Oregonian article about that, about there are some houses out there in Beaverton that aren't actually houses, they're well pumps.
Right.
And it's really fascinating, actually.
So
let's
it
teach you
works-
about that.
It works really well with our whole service project thing, because
Yeah.
on the Wolf,
Yeah, Wolf now has a your den needs to come to the committee
the
meeting
committee and
and
asked,
present
and so we got our
projects.
committee to actually come to us at their meeting.
Hey, that works.
It's easier than trying to get them to all
This is
come to our
Wolf?
meeting.
Yeah, Wolf
Yeah.
has, Webelows has a service project that's tied into, I forget the name of the adventure, but it's really go on a hike and do a service project.
Yeah.
With Wolf,
They
it's
have a
they want the Wolves to
big-
take the initiative and come to the committee meeting and say, here's the issue that we see, we'd like to do this service project. And the committee will then say, yeah, go ahead, or
It's gonna be on.
maybe redirect or something like that. So yeah,
Okay.
And I'll talk a little bit about some of the other
Actually, my money.
ranks in our service projects. Does anybody else have any service projects?
Just
Yeah.
one more thing too. Okay, so when I talked to her, she put my name on this list because Clean Water Services also does a lot of planting in the fall and winter.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so if you call, she'll put your name on the list, and she says she has projects. Most of the rec center projects don't want 8-year-olds.
Okay.
When
Like
I
12
call
Hills
them,
Parks and Rec.
they,
stuff like that.
14 is about what they want. And a few they'll let you do where they're ripping up stuff, but they find that the boys lose interest after half an hour, which is.
Yeah. It's a
And
little
so-
challenging.
So it's, but Clean Water has a bunch of stuff that they can do where you're actually planting a plant, which probably
Yes.
keeps the boys a little bit more interested in planting.
I've got an example of that for the conservation project as well.
And so
It just takes a few more liters.
if you call
Yes.
this
Exactly.
Ellie, then she'll put you on the list and,
Okay.
and,
Excellent.
So you call Clean Water Services for all this?
yeah, it'll be on, Mike
Yeah.
said
Yeah.
it'll be on. It'll be
Okay.
on.
I'll go ahead and put that
And
out.
there's other planting services that are out there that.
Yep. In terms of,
Conservation.
and I kind of lump that a little bit more into the conservation project.
Right.
There's a few that I'll mention locally that are great resources for doing that. Does anybody else have a good service project idea they want to share before we kind of move
Well, it's
on?
similar, except it's not along this, it's the conservation doing the tree
Okay.
plant.
We'll come back to that then.
So,
Oh, and I have one more that we did too.
Shoot,
Okay,
please.
I've been looking for it because we have to do, how many? 4 or 5 now.
It's a fair swath.
So, so took the boys, I called the rec center,
Mhm.
thinking that they would have a thing, 2 of the things I gotta remember, okay. So, they have a thing called trail maintenance. So they don't have really projects for 8-year-olds, but you can take your boys and do trail maintenance. So you can go on the trail in the rec center area
Mhm.
and look for hazards. And so we did the
Fallen
outdoor
tree
code
branches
and the
kind
leave
of
no
thing.
trace before, so that they actually, like when we came to the rotted tree, they didn't actually pick anything up, and they actually could do their, look for 5 animals or 4
Yes,
animals while we were
exactly.
hiking.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what they came up with, because I thought they were going to be too noisy, but they got slugs and spiders and birds and.
That's great.
They got quite a few things, but,
Yeah.
so you can do a trail maintenance, which they love to have done, so you just go on the trail, you take any hazards off.
So this is something like a fallen tree branch or
Right,
something
right.
along those. Okay.
And, but then the big thing was is to use your outdoor code and.
Right, and that's required for almost every rank, I think it is, to revisit the outdoor code, leave no trace principles, from Tiger all the way to Aeroblade.
So we went up to PCC actually and
Oh.
did their little.
Rock Creek?
Yeah.
Yeah,
PCC Rock
excellent.
Creek has a little nature trail there. so
Oh,
we just
very
did that
cool.
one, and
Is that managed by THPRD or is
that
that
was actually by the PCC, so I
Yeah.
asked them before.
good enough?
They gave us little pencils for doing it for them, you know.
Ah, that's cool.
And so we went out, and it's just barely like a mile, which is the wolf requirement.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Tiger is go on a walk, Wolf is 1 mile, and I think Bear is, I don't know if there's a mileage or not, but I kind of lumped, when we did a lesson plan, I lumped those 3 together and said, go on a mile walk and listen for birds and stuff like that, and exactly. That's fantastic.
And then, this one I have, I just, okay, I'll think of it.
Okay.
What if I pass it?
Anybody else have any great community services, drives, toy drive, good experience? Go ahead.
Whatever it was. Okay, so you have to have all these outdoor fires and stuff to do, outdoor
Campfire
camps and stuff. Okay.
skits, yeah.
So there's no place in Tualatin Hills Parks that you can actually have a fire.
Okay.
So I called and talked to security, and because we're scouts, we can actually talk to him. You have to send him an email and tell him what you're going to do, and you can take a fire pit. You have to provide sand and your shovels and all the water and
Okay.
stuff, but with specific permission each time, you can actually get a permit to go to the parks and have an outdoor campfire. If you want.
Okay.
And he said he's only do it because he'll tell other people they can't do it because scouts have our own insurance and stuff for
Right.
the units.
Right.
And so he'll let scout units do it. We just have to tell him he had like, he wants to have sand underneath it, and then afterwards you take a rake and just rake the sand into the lawn, so you don't ruin
Right.
the lawn.
Take everything in, bring everything out.
And then take everything out
Yeah,
and
okay.
have water and of course safety and all that, the waste hole.
Yeah, for some of those, I can envision, especially for LDS units that aren't going to do overnights, doing something like Shampooey Park. Maybe have a day there, because there are some fire pits, I believe, at Shampooey.
Yeah, it's just really hard
But
in
yeah,
our area.
It is.
Because
It
of
is.
all the parks, there's no real place you can have
Yeah.
a campfire in Washington County, so
Yeah.
I just thought, when I asked, I said.
No, that's great to know, though.
So if you want to know, you can do one,
You have the connection.
Well, it's not.
The thing is, we don't want to abuse that either. So spreading that out to everybody and then have this guy on the phone all the time every weekend.
No, but I mean, if it's your pack
Yeah.
thing, I think he'll be just fine with it as long as you send him all the information how you're going to do it. Then he sends you back an email, which is your permission slip.
Okay,
Otherwise,
great.
security will stop you if you don't have your permission slip.
The other half of that requirement, from my interpretation, is I don't necessarily see the fire as a requirement. For me, if I look at something like the way you do a blue and gold, and you have all the different dens potentially come up and do some skits or sing a song, I would think that that would fulfill that requirement. So we didn't have a fire; it's inside. There may have been one or two of them that were specific to do it outside. Yeah, you know, there's, for instance, Beaverton Christian Church has a kind of a amphitheater. You could do something there if you ask permission, and not necessarily have to have a fire. So,
Yeah, I just thought.
but a fire's nice.
So we can cook our hot dogs and stuff.
Exactly, do
So
s'mores and all that.
That's
kind
pretty
of
fun, you know.
And another option too is you got the rings that if you're in an area, a lot of times the fire department will say that if you're using charcoal, it's different than making a fire with wood.
Right.
So if you want to change it around and, right, you can do the charcoal in there, then you can talk about having that as your campfire
Absolutely.
instead.
But you can't do any of those fires. I mean, you have
Well,
to
and I
do it.
think, I remember last month, somebody mentioned that they did a thing at the fire station, that they contacted the fire station. They said, yeah, come on over, we'll do a thing here and set up a thing for you guys. I think it was a den that they did. So there are some options there. Do you have a comment?
That'd be great with the hero thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, local heroes, which
Do the
is,
fire station one.
which one is that?
campfire.
Wolf or bear? I
It's
forget.
Weeblos.
Is it Weeblos?
Or
Yeah.
Arrow of Light.
One of them.
The wolves have it.
I can't remember either. Daryl's
The
gonna.
wolves have it.
Yeah. And everyone has sort of find a local law enforcement or fire, some kind of a thing. Yeah. Okay, so any other comments about community service before I transition into the conservation service? I'm gonna have you guys here for way too late. I think I did want to mention there are segments, and segments are still happening. Don't get confused about segments versus belt loops for the adventures. For any civic service, you guys do a toy drive or the drain cleanout, that counts as civic service. And immediate recognition for Cub Scouts is an important thing. Give them a segment that's on their uniform. Scouting for Food has its own. And this is a new one, Living Service. This is about the elderly, homebound, nursing home kind of thing. If you do something like that, make sure your scouts get that recognition. They can wear the uniform and be proud of it. And if you do, again, flags the Sarah Cemetery for that kind of service, give them a patriotic segment. I've found Cub Scouts really like wearing these things, and they kind of identify each different ones. Yeah, I remember I did that, and that was fun. Along with that, there are some awards if you get ambitious. Anybody familiar with Messengers of Peace? It's a pretty big deal. It ranges from Cub Scouts all the way to Boy Scouts adventuring. It's a circle that goes around the world crest. There are 3 different aspects that you can do a project in. I encourage you, if you're interested, to look into that. It's actually not a Boy Scouts of America award. It's actually a World Scouting Award, if I remember correctly. So go forth and conquer. And the International Spirit Award is similar. There's a few community service kind of things, international service, hosting an international scout kind of things. It's a new one, I think, if I remember right. Check it out. See what you think.
So is that Messenger of Peace one for just leaders or boys or?
Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Varsity, Venture, adults count.
And
You will see adults wearing that if you look every once in a while. I've seen a few floating around. And it's usually a fairly substantial project. It's not like an Eagle Scout project, but it takes some time and some effort. But yeah, as an adult, if you coordinate it and you help out, you get to wear them.
But it's not like it's a group thing.
It is a group thing. It's not individual. And it would be the kind of thing that you do. You could potentially, I think, do it as a den, but it lends itself best as a pack.
Okay.
And I think there's some of these things where people have like pen pals and you exchange letters about what are you doing for this and what's your project like. There's an international flavor to it, but there's also a community service element. And when I get to the reporting aspect, you'll see 3 main buckets that goes into. And we'll be talking about Messengers of Peace, I think, in a few months. I think Daryl's more familiar with that than I am, so I'll let him talk about that.
Can I just ask really quick?
Shoot.
Because I know we'll probably not go back to segments, but on the very bottom one it says Magnus Tree Farm,
Yes.
which I know where that is.
Yep.
Do they allow fires there?
I would
'Cause I
be
know there's a
really
fire pit.
surprised. Well, maybe. I don't know. I've never been out there. I know people who have.
I've rented it a couple of times,
Okay.
and there's a fire pit, and then there's also like a place kind of over by the whatever.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. If there's a fire pit, maybe. Worth asking.
Is there like what are the rules about having fires outside the county? Do you know?
I'm pretty sure.
Like I live on a farm.
I do too. And I
Can
have
I
a fire
have
pit.
a fire?
Absolutely.
And I have a
Are
fire.
you outside the urban growth boundary?
Yes.
Yes. So in terms of having like an agricultural brush fire, like a big burn of stuff, that's
Right.
a little different. You got to go through it's the EPA or the DEQ. But
Okay.
in terms of like just having a campfire and having a hot dog roast,
I can do that.
light it up.
Because that's I was
Yeah.
gonna have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not.
Yeah. No. For those of us who are a little more rural, we get a little
Oh,
more
it's gonna be.
latitude.
It's down there.
That's what they all say when they're start the fire.
That's true.
It's obnoxious.
If you see the nature park on fire, we're in real trouble.
I've
There's
seen
no
the
right next
neighbor's
to it.
barn on fire, and then he started, oh, it's just a little project, and the next thing you know, his whole barn is going up.
Oh,
My neighbor has a propensity for burning plastic for some reason, and that's when it's obnoxious. But for those of us who are a little more like-minded and burn seasoned wood and not things that shouldn't be burned, so have at it.
okay.